Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach John Runs His Cake Hole, brought to you by the Sports Reclamation Project. I am your friendly neighborhood youth coach, Coach John, and as always, thank you for tuning in. Let's get through these shameless plugs. As always, thank you to everybody who has liked and followed us on our social media sites. Your feedback, follow-ups, and comments really keep the conversation going over there, and it's greatly appreciated. If you'd like to join those conversations, you can find us on Facebook at the Sports Reclamation Project and on Instagram at the_Sports Reclamation Project. If you'd like to support and represent the Sports Reclamation Project in your daily apparel, feel free to visit our shop at www.sportsreclamationproject.com and click on that shop link. I would like to share that I do not profit for anything you buy from the shop. All that money goes back into a scholarship program we have that provides the coverage of registration fees in youth sports in the area for underprivileged youth athletes. I would also be amiss if I did not mention TrueVictory.com. Founded by U.S. veterans and first responders, True Victory is a sportswear and streetwear brand dedicated to building everyday champions on and off the field. You can use the promo code RECLAMATION for your 15% discount on your purchase. That is www.truevictory.com. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this week's topic. This week's topic is an uncomfortable one to get into when it regards the competitive nature of youth sports today, and that is losing. You'll often hear me on this podcast say, I am a competitor. I do not like referring to myself as competitive because in my career and journey through youth sports, the phrase competitive to me has always been used as a justification for poor behavior, and it just hits a nerve with me. But I am a competitor. I have been a competitor my whole life. I've competed on the basketball court at high levels. I've been in a boxing ring. I've been on a football field, a baseball diamond. I have played rugby in 6 different countries with the United States Navy. I've even bumped in a professional wrestling ring. I do not like to lose. One of my favorite sports movies of all time, The Natural, great movie. Robert Redford's character, Roy Hobbs, has a great line that sums up losing. Losing is a disease as contagious as polio. Losing sucks. Nobody likes to be on the short end of a competitive stick. I understand it. Losing sucks. It hurts. It makes me physically ill to lose. It makes me even more ill if I lose due to my own mistakes or poor play. However, I would be betraying the overall mission of the Sports Reclamation Project if I did not discuss a very personal belief I have that a lot of people would call controversial. They would maybe even say it's part of that participation trophy approach. But that belief is simple. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but I believe it's the truth. Athletes need to lose. Youth athletes need to lose. There's a saying we use in the military, and that saying was, embrace the suck. And as I said before, losing sucks. But to borrow from the former 16-time world champion, the nature boy, Ric Flair, you don't like it? Learn to love it. Experience and defeat and setback are necessary. They are absolutely necessary for any team or athlete looking to grow and develop beyond themselves. You have to lose. You show me a youth athlete who has never lost due to stacked teams or myriad of other circumstances, and I will show you somebody who likely lacks resilience. Speaking of resiliency, the first reason I think that youth athletes need to lose, and it is good for you, is it teaches resiliency. As I mentioned, I was a boxer. I've always respected the boxing ability. Now I specify not the character, but the boxing ability of Iron Mike Tyson. Kid Dynamite, as they called him, the youngest world heavyweight champion of all time. When Mike Tyson stepped in the ring, it was like a hurricane. It was like an atomic bomb. Went in there quick, explosive, destructive, and left. If you don't believe that, Google his fight with Michael Spinks. You look it up on YouTube, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The man was a 5'11", 220-pound wrecking ball. However, on one fateful night in Tokyo, Tyson's Achilles heel was exposed. And it was exposed by a 42-1 underdog by the name of James Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas was at a point in his career where even his own father, who was an accomplished middleweight boxer, walked out and refused to train him. He had quit in fights before. He was a tomato can, as they call it in boxing. His dad had refused to train him. That's how washed Buster Douglas was considered. Tyson was fully prepared and expected to go into the ring and make quick work of Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas was a 29-win, 4-loss, 1-draw fighter. Buster Douglas was a 42-1 underdog. However, on that night, Buster Douglas was game. Buster Douglas carried the fight through the first 8 rounds. He was knocked down in the 8th round. Normally, when you get knocked down by Tyson, you don't get back up. Yet Buster Douglas got back to his feet. And he ended up knocking out Mike Tyson in the 10th round. Mike Tyson didn't even go the distance with Buster Douglas. It was the biggest upset in sports history. It is a fun one to go back and watch and listen to the commentators and understand the true shock and awe of the moment. That was resiliency. Douglas had lost 4 fights. It came into play. He got up in the 8th round and continued to fight. As I said before, usually when you got knocked to the ground by Tyson, you understood you opted for survival. It was in your best interest to stay down. But by Buster Douglas getting up, it exposed a fatal flaw with Tyson, and that was his lack of resiliency. It later became well known with Tyson that if you got past the onslaught of the first 3 rounds, you could break him down because he lacked resiliency. The fact is proven in his career, and Mike Tyson is arguably one of the best heavyweights of all time. He would make probably, if I was doing the top 5, he'd be number 6. But he finished 50-6, and I say 50-6 because I do not count that nonsense with Jake Paul that recently happened. But he had 44 knockouts, meaning if he was not able to knock his opponent out, he was a 500 fighter. He was average. He was 6-6. With his explosive power and relentless style, though, he often would shut down if it didn't work fast, as opposed to pushing through the discomfort, the adversity. That's what losing can create if handled right. It can create resiliency, a trait that is needed for any competitive athlete. Another thing it does is it humbles you. Arrogance stinks. I'm at the age of my life, and maybe I'm getting old, where I can't stand when someone sends me sports highlights of teenagers to my Instagram or to my Facebook of kids posturing and preening after the most basic stuff. Maybe I'm getting to that old man yells at a cloud phase in my life. I don't know. But arrogance is a smelly cologne. Confidence is needed in any aspect of sport to be successful. Arrogance is off-putting. It's cancerous to a team dynamic. And being defeated by an opponent is a humbling experience. Defeat is a public acknowledgement that in that moment, game, or competition, no matter what the circumstances were, you were not the best. You were beaten. You were not the best person on the field, the best person on the court, the best person on the pitch. Wherever you play, you were not the best. And that creates a humility, not just for athletic growth, but for personal growth and professional growth as well. Remember, 99% of these youth athletes will not play past high school. If an athlete goes without being defeated in their youth, they often do not know how to handle setbacks in a healthy manner. And this can cause issues later in life when you have to face defeat or adversity or failure, things that are all inevitable in life. You can be taught through being humbled in defeat. That's why I get really irked when I hear people, oh, we lost, but the referees, or we lost, but. Ain't no buts in wins and losses. The only but is yours, and it was beaten that day. A life lesson that comes to humility is the fact that somebody will always be better than you, either in the moment, in the game, or even constantly. Personal story with Coach John that really, really gets me. I was 0-4 in high school against our school's rival. What made it worse is one of my rep ball buddies and pickup buddies played on that team. Correction, I was 0-8. I lost all 4 years to that school, Evangel Christian. They're now Victory Christian in Lakeland, Florida. I lost all 4 years on the basketball court to them kids. The only time I was ever dunked on in high school was against Evangel Christian. And it was humbling. And it was a reminder that no matter how good my teams got, Evangel was always better. Either in the moment or the game, or in this case consistently, Evangel was always better. There's always going to be a time when you're not the best on the field, court, or pitch. This is so true. If it wasn't true, you wouldn't see so many athletes that are 7, 8 years old whose parents move them up to a higher level to see better competition. To be a successful athlete, you must persevere through defeats and setbacks. And that task requires a lot of humility to do it, and nothing is more humbling for a youth athlete than losing. One of the most important things, and I end with it all the time, accountability. Losing teaches accountability. I go back to that 1998 cult classic, Basketball, one of my favorite movies. If you're listening, I've given you 2 sports movies today you guys can go look at. The Natural with Robert Redford, and Basketball starring Matt Stone and Trey Parker. And that quote I always love to go to is, well, you know, it was a team effort, and I guess it took every player working together to lose this one. Truth is said in jest, folks. And that statement is dangerously accurate. No one play, call, missed shot, or mistake cost the team a game. It's a conglomeration of events, positive and negative. And it usually goes down to the team who makes the next to last mistake. Those are what contribute to wins and losses. And when you look at it like that, you have to be held accountable. In order to grow from defeat, all athletes need to accept their part in it. I've lost games from the bench as a coach while making decisions that hurt my team. My team had made mistakes prior down the stretch in the game. I made a decision. It cost us the game. It's the accountability you have to take. Athletes need to learn to accept their part in defeat. If an athlete grows up and never experiences defeat, they're less likely to take accountability. Or if they grow up and are led to believe it's never their fault they lost, then they definitely don't learn accountability. And there are mistakes and shortcomings in everyday life. There are. I have been teaching for going on my 10th year. I think I made a mistake every day. I can even put a safe bet I make a mistake every period. But you learn from them. You're accountable for them. Sports, like life, provides numerous opportunities to take accountability and grow. Accountability to improve one's skills after being cut or not playing enough. Accountability to accept constructive criticism. I say constructive criticism, not just unnecessary criticism from a coach. And then accountability to admit mistakes. There was no better way to develop these traits through sports than in defeat. I'm going to tell a story about a point guard I coached. I won't say his name because he's still underage, but we're running a defense. And we're running a half-court trap where him and my other guard come out and trap on the ball. He comes out a little early and blows the trap. Or he comes out a little bit early and the trap was not how it should have been. However, when I would tell him the trap, I would ask my bigs to kind of float to the middle of the lane to keep the lane open for an easy pass. Well, this young man comes out early. The big behind him doesn't respond. The ball gets in there, easy layup. We're reviewing that game film, and I show him that. And I was like, what happened there? What was the whole breakdown of the play? And kid raises his hand. I'm like, coach, I came out too early. I showed our hand. I left the middle open. There was an easy land. And I said, is that it? And he goes, yes. I was like, are you sure? And he looked at me with my mistake, left the lane open. That's accountability. He could have blamed his teammate for not floating down to kind of cover the middle of the lane briefly, but he didn't. He took accountability. And that's one of my favorite stories to share. And there's no better way to approach these traits or teach these traits I've mentioned than in defeat. You learn more losing than winning a lot of times. Again, people are going to probably come at me and tell me this is soft, or one of the comments I got on my last post was, I have a beta approach to coaching that helped me out. I'm in my 40s, don't really know what that means. Quite honestly, don't care. But allow me to elaborate once again. Losing is not fun. I often say as a coach, player development is the goal, but winning is the objective. Objectives can change, but the goals remain the same. And in the event, the objective changes from winning to be that transformational coach that I talk about. You have to understand that even in defeat, there are lessons, positive lessons to be learned in life and sport that can be learned and need to be learned. That is why it's so important as coaches. After a defeat, we don't come completely negative to the situation. We need to say our piece and address what was wrong, but we got to look at what we can learn and grow on. But losing is good for you. No matter what people want to say, losing is good for you. It teaches life lessons and ones that you can benefit from, as I like to say, when the ball stops rolling. And that's about enough of that. Once again, as I wrap this podcast up, I'd like to thank everybody for their positive interactions, their feedback, their input, their kindness, their suggestions you've reached out to me with. Please continue to tell your friends about this podcast. We are growing steadily, and I like our numbers. If you would like to join us on this podcast as a guest to talk about a topic, share something you're passionate about. If you're writing a book, if you're the host of another podcast and want to get on and collaborate with me, if you want to provide a counterpoint to what I'm doing, the messages are open. Please reach out. You can find me on Facebook at the Sports Reclamation Project. You can find me on Instagram at the_Sports Reclamation Project. Or you can email me at john@sportsreclamationproject.com. Until next time, I hate to say that's it, that's all, but I hope you have had a ball. If you're going to one of your kids' games this week, please remember, be kind to the referee. Thank your kids' coaches, and always tell your kids that you love watching them play. This is Coach John with the Sports Reclamation Project, and we will talk later.